Baruch Hashem Adonai. Happy Sabbath. This morning I'd like for you to turn with me to the book of Luke and the 15th portion that was earlier read for us. Luke chapter 15. And we're reading in relation to our topic, which is the paradox of self. The paradox of self, an introspective look at ourselves. A paradox is usually a statement that contradicts itself. Taken from the Greek, it simply means contrary to belief. A paradox of self. And I believe this passage sets the stage for our search for greater understanding into our subject. Let's read a few verses here in chapter 15. Now the tax collector, reading from verse 1, now the tax collectors and the sinners were coming to him to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes grumbled, saying, this one receives sinners and eats with them. And he spoke this parable to them, saying, what man among you, having 100 sheep and having lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one which is lost until he finds it, and having found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. That's the word of Yah. And I read that to give you a little glimpse into the passage that we're going to dilate upon this morning. That's chapter 15 of the book of Luke. It is a three-dimensional paradox in the sense that it talks about the lost sheep, the lost coin, and I will say the lost sons, plural. So it is three-dimensional. And we, most of us, being lost in the symphony of life, perhaps this morning you may see yourself within this story, within this narrative, and then find your place in the orchestra of life. And so the subject is the paradox of self. And then he tells them, we're going to be focusing on the third dimension of this parable, of the three-dimensional paradox. The word here says, verse 11, and he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of the goods put forth. And he divided his livelihood between them. And not many days after, the younger son, having gathered all together, went away to a distant country, to a far country, and there wasted his good in loose living. Let's hold it there. This certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them decides that he want to leave home. And he want to go and live his own life. He understands the culture. He knows that whatever inheritance he ought to get can only be gotten when his father dies. So it was an insult to his father to ask for his inheritance at that particular stage, showing that he did not care too much about his father. But being the gentleman that the father was, he gave him his portion. He gave him his 1/3, because we know the older son is entitled to 2 portions of the inheritance. We know that biblically. And so this young man brazenly asked for his portion. Now, as I read through the passage, and I see these paradoxes, I notice that they are often pregnant with profundity of meaning. They are designed to give birth to greater understanding. The purpose, therefore, is not to make simple things complex, but to make complex things simple. Yeshua said to his disciple, I speak to you in parable so that you can understand, but it's not for them to understand. So you watch this delicate unwinding of the tension between understanding and misunderstanding, between truth and error. Therein, this moment of epiphany takes us outside our own contrived world as we look at this prodigal son or sons. This situation lends prominence to new ways of understanding the scriptures. It also gives respect to our intellect, in that Yah calls us to reason with him because his ways are not like ours, and the only way we can become like him is to learn to think like he thinks. But you know, sometimes in teaching, and for me, certainly in writing, one gets the impression that one is speaking to an abstract generation of people. We said it this morning in Sabbath school that oftentimes when you tell people about Yah, about his Sabbath, about his feast day, nobody wants to know. It's as if you are speaking to an abstract generation, and perhaps people who are domiciled, they live in a time when we were not hooked up with synchronized sound. You know those old movies, the silent movies? It seems like that to me, the Buster Keaton, the Charlie Chaplin, and the Lara Lenardi side. It's almost as if we speak into that kind of generation. In other words, it's like a man bringing fresh bread every day to the marketplace to sell. And every day he brings this fresh bread to the marketplace. Nobody buys his bread, because the people have become so accustomed to stale donuts. They do not like fresh bread. So this morning we want to look at the numinous experience of this passage. It is full with deep and divine experience. And so we want to see if we can find ourselves, our personal self, in the text. And so the word says, this young man, and you can understand why Solomon writes, remember now thy creator in the days of thy youth, because when the old age come, when the evil days come, what will happen? You can say, or you will say, I have no pleasure in them. So this young man, we call him the prodigal son. And he went off to a far country. And I know most of you do not have that experience. You have never immersed yourself in the racing times, seeking to study the forms of the horses so that you can go and back them later on. You haven't been to that far country. That's not you. You have never spent hours in the public house drinking barley wine and drinking liquor. That's not you. You've never been to that far country. I know that. You've never been to Royal Ascot. You've never been to Epsom Downs. You've never had an interest in Cheltenham or the Grand National in Liverpool. That's not you. You have never been to that far country. Never. That's not you. So, if that's not you, perhaps you are that second brother, the older brother. You've never done anything wrong. You've always been at home. You studied well. You went off to school. You were well degreed. Your resume, when we look at it, it is circumspect. Oh, that curriculum vitae of yours. All the employers want to look at you and to interview. That's you. Your public persona. Your public persona speaks well of you. But your private life, when no one is looking, what are you like when no one is looking? Because as I read through the passage, the older brother is the one who would soon take over from the father and is responsible to look after the family. And I see no indication in the text that he even wished his brother well. I see nothing here that says he even tried to dissuade him from not going. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. I think the older brother is as lost as the younger brother. But he's lost in the house. And he represents those who are in the church believing they're doing good because they think that conviction is conversion. Conviction is not conversion. And the older brother, the older sister need to understand that. And so he's there. The word said this young man went into that far country, far away. And he was brazen enough to ask his father to finance. I mean, to fund, to bankroll his extravagance. profligacy, wastefulness, recklessness. He has the gall to say, Dad, I'm going to be disobedient and I want you to fund it. How many of us as parents try to do that? Sometimes we have to love our children from a distance to let them know that principles takes precedent over feelings. But this kind-hearted, well-meaning father gave this 1/3 of the portions to his son, and he went off into this distant land. And even from the very instant of that time, it seems that his hope is forlorn. That is until he comes to his senses. The word said he came to himself and he decides to go back home. That man, he goes back home. So you watch the delicate unwinding of the story and see whether you fit into the far country or whether you are that older brother at home, lost in the church, lost in the home. And because you're lost at home, nobody can even know that you are lost, and you don't even know you're lost, because that's the paradox of self. You're in the church week after week. You're in the church and you attend on time. And you have a great position there in the church. And the people look up to you. And you like that. And the way you present yourself, people just warm to you. That's your public persona. But deep down, you are bitter. Deep down, your attitude sends a stench to your nostril because you really want your younger brother to go, because you know when he go, everything is yours. You know that. And you don't want him back home. You don't want him at all back home. And that's why you're not happy when he comes home. Older brother. Oh, you dress well, older brother, and you speak very well, older brother. And daddy might even think that you are the best child because you're always at home and you don't leave home. But you're still lost. You're still lost because you have not lived in the way that you ought to have lived. And I see many people who are afflicted by that misdrawn reality. It is misdrawn. Therein, the word of Yah redraws the reality of that plumb line by the accuracy of the word. We must redraw that. Therefore, any illusion of faith or love without obedience to the word is folly. It is dispelled by the truth of the word. Stay with me. The young man went into a far country. That's what the word said. Let's go back to the text. Luke 15, verse 14. And when he had spent all, there arose a severe scarcity of food throughout the land, and he began to be in need. Those of us who have been to the far country, we know what famine is. We know what it's like to be broke on Saturday night. when you have no money to go on the town. I can put myself in the story. I know what it's like. I've been to that far country. I can imagine when this young man was going on his way, he was singing, money in my pocket, but I just can't get no loud. But when he was coming back, the word said he was broke. Not only was he broken financially, he was broken mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. He was just broken. There was a scarcity of food. Amos picks it up and want you at the end time in chapter 8 and verse 11 to know a spiritual famine is coming, not for food and water, but for the word, for the understanding of the word. I believe that time is now. And if that time is now, then some of us, many of us, represent this young man who is the prodigal. Oh, yes. You see, the young man who went in the far country, that's geographical. That's tangible. You know where that land is. But the young man, the elder brother who stayed at home, his situation, his condition was spiritual. The other one was moral, but his is spiritual. But both of them are lost. They're both lost. And so he joined himself with the people. Sounds like us, doesn't it? He developed some friends and people, and he found himself a little job. But you see what desperation does? Have you seen it? Desperation will make you go to levels that you yourself cannot conceive before then. Because for a Jewish young man, a Jewish boy, interacting in the way that he was with pigs, swines, is inconceivable. But that's what the word said. He was now mingling with pigs. And not only that was he mingling with pigs, in his thoughts, he was conceiving, he was fantasizing that the food that the pigs were eating, perhaps he ought to shortchange them and take some for himself. That's what our times sometimes do to people. But the word said those pods, you know what they are? Those are the carob pods. Another name for them is locust. And that's what John the Baptist used to eat in the wilderness. You know, some people think that the locusts are the insects, but no, they're the carob pods. In fact, there's another name, they call them St. John's bread. If you hear that name, St. John's bread, it's the carob pots that this was being fed to the pigs. And this young man said he would have some. And perhaps if it's good for John the Baptist, it must be good, because when you read of them, it says that they're very nourishing. And pigs was eating this sumptuously, but not this young man. And he thought to himself, when I left home, my father had numerous servants, and I better go back home. I better go back home. But sometimes you just have to lengthen the leash on your own children, though it's hard to do, Because in their mind, they think they are right. They know more than you. But unless they feel the pangs of our time, unless they feel the weight of their own cargo, unless they feel that, they will not be reminded as to how good it was at home before they left. And parents, you will remember those younger days with your children when you had to go from room to room and spread up their beds and switch the lights on and make sure the refrigerator is closed. You remember those days, don't you? And perhaps later on when you visit their home, you see how they close their fridge doors and the beds are well spread and the lights are not left. You know that. So sometimes hard time teaches experiences. But this young man, remember what it was like at home. Some of us have left the church, leave the faith. And that's perhaps more correct to say leave the faith rather than leave the church. Because sometimes when you leave the church, it is at that time that you find your faith. Because the faith is Yeshua and it's in the word. And the word sanctifies you. Are you with me? So this young man, like so many who have left the faith, and it's easy to leave the faith. All you have to do to bring calamity on yourself is stop obeying what God says. You don't keep his laws. You don't keep his feast days. You listen to institutions that tell you that they're done away with. And you are in rebellion. You are that young man who had gone to that far country. It is easy to see the lost sheep. He's out there, is in the betting shop. The lost sheep is at Ascot. He is backing horses. The lost sheep is out there. We last saw him at Cheltenham. He is playing kaluki and he is playing poker. We know the lost sheep. We know where to find him because where he is, it is geographical. But the elder brother who is in the church, he is at home. He is lost in the church, but nobody knows that he's lost. And he doesn't know. That's the paradox of self. And it's for that reason today we come to take an introspective look at ourselves and moreover to understand the wider meaning of this paradox. Because at the time when we are having to teach people and preach to people and write to people, it is at that same time that they can scroll and browse on the internet and they can find secular sensation and drama, things that please them. It means at that time that the word of Yah is unto them too strict a diet for them to eat. And so today we want to redraw that line. Say much of what you're eating is just fast food. This is the word of Yah, and thus saith Yah. So come with me to the verse here that says that the young man decided to come home. And he went home and his father saw him afar off. Perhaps the father was yearning to see a sign, to even get a letter from him, to hear something about him all these years. But then he saw him and he hastened to tell the servants to prepare a meal and get the fatty calf for him and make sure that we welcome him home. And perhaps they were wondering, why would you do that to a no good young man who went and squandered his wealth? But only the heart of a father or the heart of a mother would understand what this father was doing. And then the word says in verse 25, and his older son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He heard that. Because we read earlier in the same chapter, that when one sinner repents, when one sinner comes home, decide enough of the world that I'm not going to let Satan dictate to me anymore how I should live my life, but I'm going to please my Creator. The word says when that happens, there is joy, exceeding joy. They're ecstatic. Great ebullience in heaven when one person rejoices. Wow. Can you not see the heart and the mind of that father? He understands the connection between heaven and earth when one person is saved. But the word here says, this older brother, this sullen brother, this bitter brother, this stoic brother, this strange older brother, he didn't feel what his father felt. He was not able to enter into the subjective world of his father. In his mind, he's thinking, where is he going? We don't want him here. That's the attitudinal brother. That's how he behaved. Let's read it again for emphasis. Verse 25, chapter 15 in the book of Luke. And his oldest son was in the field. He's here working. And he's working to look good in the eyes of his father. Are you with me? There's so many of us, we try to be good. Huh? Well, social workers do good and nurses do good. You cannot do good to be saved. But when you are saved, you do good. Are you with me? And he's in the field every day and he's making sure that nobody comes in again because his brother is gone and the double portion that's left is his. And he certainly doesn't want brother to come back home having squandered his inheritance and to get any of what he has. He doesn't want that. That's not going to happen. And the word said that he would not come into the party. Dad understands that this young man, a kind of a Joseph in Egypt, Jacob is thinking Joseph is dead. But then he realizes that Joseph is not dead. Joseph is living in Egypt. It's that kind of a situation. That's the wider context of this thing here. And we're going to go there in a minute. You'll see why I just mentioned Joseph. You'll see why. But the father is saying, my son was dead spiritually, but is now alive. How many of us have children who are spiritually dead? Because we ourselves did not raise them in the way of Yah, and so they went on that trajectory, that path that circumstances laid for them, but we did not correct them at all. And so they went out, and because they have a good resume, we think that's okay. But I ask you, even as this father was asking his son, but perhaps did not vocalize it, where will you spend eternity? Where? This older brother. You know, it reminds me of Scrooge. This older brother, he's hoarding his resources. He's making sure that's it. And nobody is going to get, he doesn't put himself out for anybody. Are you with me? This older brother. I'm not going to do anything that I don't want, that displeases me. I am not going to, if it's convenient, I will do it, says the older brother. But I'm not putting myself out. I did not wave him goodbye when he went, and I'm not going to welcome him when he comes. That's the older brother's attitude, and people in the churches are like that. Your joy is their sorrow. And when you're sorrowful, they rejoice. That's the story of the two lost brothers. Often we only focus on what we call the prodigal son, but the older brother is as lost as he was. And so, verse 26. And having called one of the servants, he asked, that music, that sound that I hear, what's that? What's going on in there? What does it mean? And he said unto him, your brother has come, and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf, because he received him back in health. Health. Did you hear that? He's okay. And he could sing, it is well with my soul. It is well. And the word, it says in verse 28, this is in reference to the older brother, and he was wroth and would not go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. And answering, he said unto the father, see, these many years I have been serving you, and I've never transgressed the command of yours, but to me, you have never given me a young goat, so I could rejoice with my friends. But when this son of yours, notice he didn't say his brother, he said this son of yours, right, came, right, what did you do? But when this son of yours came, who was devoured your livelihood with whores. Wow. He's rubbing him. He's really rubbing his father's nose in it. And perhaps we ought to ask a question. How do you know that your brother were a prostitute? How do you know that? You didn't care about him. But now you're throwing things at your father to make him think that the brother is even worse than he is. Your son, not my brother, says this man. He wasted extravagantly, may I add, your resources, and he spent it with prostitutes, women of the night, women of ill repute. And daddy is perhaps supposed to squirm at this. That's what he's doing this for. Are you with me? I never transgressed. I was the goody two shoes. That's me, says he. I've been in the church all my years. And you hear people say from time to time, I was born in the church. Have you heard that saying? And perhaps you ought to add, were there no hospitals in that community? They don't mean that they were born in the church, but they want to tell you that, we're state members here. That's what they want to tell you. But the father would not be dissuaded from his welcome. But when this son of yours came, who devoured your livelihood with war, you slaughtered the fatted calf. He had his eye on this fatted calf too, you know. You realize that. I mean, the father could have given him a little kid, but the fatted calf? Well, then he said unto him, son, you're always with me. Huh? And all I have is yours. You didn't get it. The father said, everything I have is yours, and you're still angry? Wow. And we had to rejoice and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive and was lost. And what? Now we find him. He's home. He has not been home for a while, but he's here with us. Come on, crack a smile. Not that older brother. He does not want to know. He's not going to dance. And don't give him a slice of the cake. He doesn't want any. Are you with me? And perhaps at this stage, you really want to know, don't you? Because curiosity dictates that you want to know who this prodigal son is. Are you with me? You want to know. Because Yeshua made it very, very clear, did he not? That he is the one shepherd. Isn't that what he said? And he has a particular flock. He has one flock. That's what he said. You better come with me to John. John chapter 10, and we will look at 14 to 17. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known of mine. They know me. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay my life down for the sheep. Yeah, that's what the Father did. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore, thus my Father loved me, because I lay my life that I might take it up again. I will give my life, he's saying, for my son. I'll do that. I'll do that. When we read in Deuteronomy 21 in verse 17, or verse 7, I should say, you see that, and 17, that the oldest son gets a double portion. Oh, yes. Oldest son gets a double portion. But who? Who is this prodigal son? Who is it? Who is the prodigal son? So come with me to the book of Genesis. That's Bereshit. And we are going to look at chapter 48. Chapter 48 of Genesis. Because the word says, and it came to pass after these things that one told Joseph, behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Hear me? Joseph hears that his father, Jacob, is sick. So he takes his son, these two North African boys, and decided, I'm going to visit my father. And one told Joseph and said, behold, told Jacob, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. Are you with me? Just like we read earlier, that this father was grateful to see his son. grateful in the sense of his joy. He had nothing to be grateful for the son. He's grateful that the son was alive. Jacob here is, prior to that, expressing his own feelings in that way, because this is a paradox. It's contradicting the truth. And so there is a truth within us that our behavior betrays us and contradicts so often. Hence, our subject, paradox of self. And said unto me, verse 4, behold, I will make thee fruitful. He's telling, Jacob said unto Joseph, El Shaddai appeared unto me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make of thee a multitude of people, and will give this land to thy seed after thee for everlasting possession. He is giving him a foretaste, a preview. This is a prelude to what he's about to do. He's about to bless his sons. Verse 8 says, and Israel beheld Joseph's sons, and said, who are these? And Joseph said unto his father, these are my sons, whom Elohim has given me in the slave. And he said, bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Are you with me? Jacob, perhaps at this time, remember the blessing that he gets from his father. So he knows how important it is to give a blessing to his children. And when a child leaves home without the blessing of the parent, can you imagine what they go out into the world with? So Jacob here is saying, let me bless them. Now watch the delicate unwinding. That's what I spoke about earlier. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see, and he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not hoped to see thy face, and lo, Elohim has shewed me also thy seed. I've seen your children. I never conceived that I would see you again, when the brothers came home and told me that you had died. I'm joyful when one person, one sinner, comes home after repentance. Heaven rejoices. Verse 13. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and hear me, and his left hand over Manasseh's head, guiding his hand wittingly, not unwittingly, wittingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. Jacob knows what he's doing. Joseph is yet to catch on. And he blessed Joseph and said, Elohim, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the Elohim which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lad. Let my what? Jacob says, let my name Israel be on Ephraim and Manasseh. Hear me. Ephraim and Manasseh are Israel. But you say, but all of them are the children of Israel. But only these two are Israel. And they form the 10 northern tribes. We read that last week in 1 Kings chapter 12. And oftentimes the scriptures refer to the northern tribe as Ephraim because of the largest tribe. But you see here that Jacob blessed them, these two, and say, hey, these are Israel. When they were out of the land, when they were taken by the Assyrians in 722 BC, the land was then known as who? The land of Judah. The Romans named it. Hear me? And the word says Israel is Yah's firstborn. Are you with me? Israel. And Joseph belongs to that original Israel. That means his son Ephraim is younger than what? Than Judah. Judah is the fourthborn. Joseph is the firstborn of his mother. But he was way down the line. Come with me to Chronicles. And we will look at First Chronicles. And we will look at chapter 5. The word says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for so much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph. His birthright, did you hear me? His birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. Did you get that? Joseph is the son of Israel. Reuben is the firstborn. Reuben climbed up onto his father's bed and defiled it. So he's not going to get the double portion. That was given to Ephraim and Manasseh. And Manasseh is younger than Judah, because when Manasseh was in captivity, Judah was in the land. He's younger. May I present to you that prodigal son is none other than Ephraim being expressed in that way. And the two sons are Ephraim and Judah. That's the older brother that was at home. Judah has always been in the land, always been at home since they returned from Babylon. But this younger brother, Ephraim, has never been there. He's away in a far country, dispersed all over the world. That's what the word wants you to know. Are you with me? Let us read Hosea 8. And we will read verses 11 and 12. Because Ephraim hath made many altars to sin, altars should be unto him a sin. I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. He lived riotously, Ephraim. Listen to Exodus 4 and verse 22. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Moses, thus said Yahweh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Are you with me? Israel is my son. So Ephraim is my firstborn, and Ephraim was taken out of the land, and he went into a far country. The Assyrians took him into a far country. But we know that Judah came back in three different portions through Zerubbabel, through Ezra, and through Nehemiah. He has been at home all this time. But Ephraim went and squandered his inheritance all over the place. So you better come with me now to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11. And the word says, you better look at verse 10 and 11. And in the day there shall be a root of Jesse. Did you hear me? In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall be a what? Which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Verse 11. And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall set his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Amath, and from the islands of the sea. Judah is at home. But it says here, Ephraim, that represents Israel, the day is coming when he's going to come to his senses, like the prodigal son. The word says, when he came to himself, when he knew himself, blessed is the man who knows himself. There is no greater ignorance than a person who doesn't know himself. When he knows himself, and he shall set up an ensign for the nation, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel. Did you hear me? He's coming home. That includes us, who are part of that diaspora. Did you understand what I just said? I said, you are the prodigal, and you disobeyed and asked your father to finance and to bankroll your disobedience, but now you're coming home because the word said, Isaiah says here that he's going to round us up back and bring us back home. And this is the problem now, because when they come, because we have been away for so long, they don't even know how we look and what we look like. And when they see how we look, oh, the brother over there now who is thinking that they are us, they will say, we don't want them here. We don't want that younger brother here. We don't want the Falashan Jews here. We don't want those who were taken to West Africa and brought to the Americas and to England. We don't want them here. And the Father is saying, welcome them. They were lost. They lost their identity. They did not know who they are. And now they have come home. Get the fatted calf. Put a ring on his finger. Are you with me? Let it be so. But the older brother don't want to come into the house. Are you with me? Let them stay. Because we'll close on this, because Matthew 22, you know, it really gets to us. Matthew 22 speaks to us because it's emblematic of what is going to happen. The word says that the kingdom of heaven, that's verse 2, is likened unto a certain king which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servant to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again he sent forth, you know, the older brother, go and get him. Tell him we're having a party. Go and tell him. He said, he's not coming. Well, why are you coming? Because I don't want to mingle with those people. Listen to what the passage said before. They accused Yeshua of doing what? Eating with sinners. Are you with me? This man, he eats with sinners. Perhaps if he was down here today, they would say he eats with niggers. I mean, they would say he eats with people of color. Are you with me? I just want to make sure that I don't offend anyone. Even though himself said he's bronze. You know, we're watching the bronzing of our society, and nobody is noticing what's going on, because Yahweh is rounding up. I talk about that delicate unwinding of things. Everything is prophetically laid out. If only you could stitch those bits together and understand the warmth of the garment that we're trying to make. Are you with me? And so Yahweh is going to round us up. And so remember, all this is happening at the time of the famine. And it's at this time, Amos wants you to know, when the famine is underway, when people are unable to get the true and full understanding of the word, it is at that time that we are going to go home, because it's going to dawn. Desperation can make you do two things. It can drive you to Yahweh, and he can drive you away from him. For the young man, it drove him home, but for the other brother, it drove him away. He didn't want to come into the house. Are you with me? And so the word is that he says, Father, we're talking about repentance, isn't it? We talked about that this morning. Father, I have sinned, and I have done wrong. And I am not worthy to be your son. Hire me to be a servant. It is interesting, as I look out there, I look at the royal household, and I see one of those two brothers, hear me, one of those two brothers saying, is spare. He calls himself Spare, and the book that he's coming out with is called Spare, like he's a spare part, like he's an addendum to it. And of course, in that story, as you all know, there is a older brother. Are you with me? And therefore, one wonders whether this older brother cannot create the environment and the situation to bring this brother home. This is something that is right in front of our eyes, and it's contemporary, and it's playing out. Can we not see that? And people write long articles in newspaper, and they talk about the rift between the two brothers, and we are seeing it even in our own eye, and we are saying, older brother. Shall I say it this way? Where there is a will, William, there ought to be a way. Yeah? Are you with me? So I'm speaking to the other brother now. Would you hurry your way home to and do what you're supposed to do? Just hurry home. Hurry. The word is that Yah wants to save all of us. All we have to do in most cases is just say, Yah, I believe, please forgive my unbelief. May it be that we have found ourselves in this narrative today, in this story, and we will go home and we will pray earnestly, and we will ask the Father to forgive us because we were hesitant to come to his festival, his party, we call tabernacle. We didn't want to go in. This is the older brother did not want to go in. May it be that we are not like that, because we have now come to our senses, even as this young man came to his senses. In Yeshua's name I pray. Hallelujah.